Welcome to Tech for Good with Bethel Green Ventures. My name is Dama Sathianathan, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Zoe Peden, who is a partner at Ananda Impact Ventures. Hello, Zoe.
Hello, Dama.
Yeah,
Thanks for inviting me on.
Always delightful to speak to you. We'll just get really into it with a few sort of generic questions. But Zoe, tell us a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you do before you started investing?
So before I was investing, I was a founder. Before that, I worked in product. But I guess if you to rewind, where did I grow up? I grew up in Stockport, which is like 5 miles south of Manchester. So I'm a Manc, basically. And I grew up in a single parent family with my mum and my sister on benefits, so free school meals. And I was always fascinated with movies, and I love the movie Wall Street. And I saw that through investment, you could create a new life for yourself. And I wanted to do that. And I wanted to be a stockbroker. And I went to London School of Economics, so the first person in my family to go to university, but I think actually the first person from my school to go to LSE, because it had a high employment record, the second after Cambridge, in getting a job. And I wanted to make sure I could get a job because it was the 90s and there was a recession. And I tried to get into investment banking, just like on Wall Street, the movie, but failed miserably. Didn't pass any of the psychometric tests for all the interviews. I think it was my anxiety. I was sweating, I was babbling. I'd never been in a professional interview or I'd never been exposed to anywhere growing up where people wore suits. The closest I got were the people that worked in the bank giving out money. So when we used to have local banks and people would work behind them, they wore suits, but no one I'd ever come across before had a professional job. So I didn't really know how to speak or respond to things. So I blabbed a lot and just sweated profusely. So I didn't get that. But what I did do is my blabbing actually worked and I've been writing a lot and like a student journalist. And I managed to get a job in academic publishing. And apparently I was hired because I talked a lot. So it was a very low qualification by the person that hired me in academic publishing. And I didn't even know how to type. So I had to learn how to use a computer, but also how to type in that first job. And it was also where the person that hired me, because I could blab and talk, actually got made redundant within 3 months. And in her office was a HTML and a JavaScript book. And that's how I moved into digital, because I started to learn to build websites at work, which is not really allowed. But and I got into trouble and I got a written warning. And that's when I decided I wanted to work somewhere where they respect that. And I wasn't used to I was a bit of a goody two shoes. I wasn't used to getting into any trouble. So it really annoyed me. And I think I was right, getting where I am now. I think I caught the trend. I started to build websites and digitize content for the next 10 years. And then when I got sick of working for other people, which I did, and also profit-making entities were owned by private equity, where people were getting sacked all the time or moved on, and basically you weren't in control. You were a cog in the wheel, like being in a factory, essentially. Even if you were in a nice office, you were just part of the machine. And I wanted to run a machine. So that's when, I was like, right, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I want to do my own thing. I want to build my own startup. So that's kind of what I did before, and I built a startup, and one of my investors was Ananda. So my journey with them started as an investee with what I guess you'd call a Series A back then.
Yeah.
All the numbers are different these days. But that's how I got into investing. When I exited my company, they asked me to be a venture partner, and I was sourcing for them. And then we built up a different kind of relationship, like the afterlife after being a founder. And I became more of a peer, and we got closer and closer. And I did a 4-year apprenticeship in VC, because no matter how much industry experience, and I was 40 at the time, so I've been working nearly 2 decades, venture capital is quite different. It has its own rules, its own way of working, and it's a bit of a mystery to everyone that's outside it, as I'm sure you think so too, Dana. So yeah, I had to learn how it all works, and then I became a partner. So
Yeah.
that's what I did.
Yeah, and here to celebrate becoming a partner too. It is such a fascinating story hearing actually that you went from being backed by the firm that you now work for to actually progressing up to becoming a partner as well. So it's really fascinating hearing these stories as well because there aren't that many. So thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah,
guess
sorry, it's a bit of a long one, but it is. You asked before that, so you're talking about 35. The older I get, the longer it gets. I'm like, well, how do I compress this? What's it going to be like when I'm like 80? How am I going to tell this story?
I
I'm going
mean,
to have to think of new ways.
yeah, but that's the fun bit, right? We can always think about new ways of how we tell those stories. That's
Yeah,
really great.
skip decades. I think this is what I'm going to have to do.
I take a decade off, which is also
Yeah.
really nice. I guess my next question really just maybe focuses a bit more with your experience as a founder of running your own machine, as you said, to now shaping your approach as an investor. What sort of insights from being a founder and operator did you bring into your investor experience, and how has that really shaped you as an investor?
I think so it was 10 years that I was building, and about 3 or 4 of them in the investment environment of fundraising. And there were not a lot of investors around in the tech for good space back then. It was 2011 to like 2016. It was, I don't know, a fraction, maybe 10% of what there is now around. So there wasn't many places to go to raise investment. But I remember the power struggle. So, you're building a company. You believe in your idea, people are buying from you, you're making money, you're employing people. And then somebody comes on the other end of the line when you try and raise investment to question whether what you're doing is the right thing. They've got no experience in anything that you do. And they're making judgment calls on you within 5 minutes of a call. And you can feel all of this. So that it's not equal power going into a call. And, that's very difficult, I think, as an entrepreneur, particularly when you're quite further down the line and you've been doing it for a while, to be questioned like that. So that never leaves me. And even when I'm really tired, or, everyone does long days, founders do long days, but sometimes investors do too. I might do 10 or 12 meetings in a day. By the time you're on the 10th, you're like, oh, there's the Coke Zero, because you're in the Zoom most of the time. It's all changed these days. There's not the face-to-face stuff where it's a little bit more relaxed. The Zoom is intense, and you need to be looking at the screen for very long lengths of time.
Yeah.
And that is like, woo, with your head. And every time I have to go, for them, it's the first time that they're seeing you. It may be the first time that they've spoken to a VC. You're not only representing yourself, but Ananda and the whole of, impact investing. So you turn up and you give them everything because they're giving you everything. So that never leaves me. And I can often feel, I obviously say what my background is and what I've done in the first 2-3 minutes, more to like position it like I'm one of you. Sometimes that can go wrong and they can feel a little bit threatened, particularly the younger the founder gets. I guess there's something about my age which creates a barrier, unfortunately, these days. And I can feel the power struggle, even though I've tried to break it down. And so I watch and I try and encourage and turn it around to demonstrate they're doing a great thing. Give them that encouragement that I think, if you haven't been on the other side, you wouldn't take the time, I don't think, to do that, because you're trying to think of so many other things when you're on a call with a founder to ask them in the short space of time to work out and assess whether they're going to go through to the next stage or not, whether this is something that you want to take and refuse the rest of the people that you saw that day, kind of thing. So there's that. And also something that I had to change, so rather than for the founders, so reverse of your question, is that I had to learn patience.
Yeah.
Because in the investment world, is really slow compared to when you're building a startup. And and I miss that, but I've also reconciled now with quite a number of years being on this side of the table now. It is really slow. You are managing other people's money, which means that you've got a lot of risk assurance that you need to do before you make an investment. And you're representing a firm that is not just about you. Whereas when you're the CEO at the beginning, when that's when your company's small, you are the culture. Everything that you do is the culture. It is in a VC, but it's not you alone. You have partners, and then together you must all act together. And there's 4 partners at Ananda. So there's like 4 CEOs.
Yeah.
That is weird. You all have to work together and say the same things in unison. It's like, imagine 4 co-CEOs. This is hard, and that's how all the VCs work, and you have to operate like that. Otherwise, you send out wrong signals, not just to the staff, but to the portfolio and to all the new founders. So, patience and just urgency.
Yeah.
Our urgency and timelines is completely different to when you're a founder. You're working to say, right, we've got a 4-month window to raise this investment. I'm looking at 6 to 12 months, not 4 months. My urgency, some of the things that I have to do in due diligence is, I can't change it.
Yeah.
So I'm acutely aware of this, and I think it's just like managing that with strong communication from the get-go, and building when you do want to start the due diligence to invest, being very aware of the time that you're taking from a founder, and getting to know fast, if at all possible. Sometimes really hard when it's very scientific. There's lots of due diligence that you need to educate yourself on, but try and get there as fast as possible so that they know who's in the running and who's in or out in their sales pipe for investment.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that I'm aware of, that I think you only done it if you fundraised yourself.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think the particular aspect around the speed of execution as well, because not many founders are aware, and because it's so different to each of the funds that are out there, that it's actually quite helpful to get just a sense of like how
different styles. It's you wouldn't know, and there's a question like, why would you care what kind of style and culture the VC has? But it will tell you about the pace. Like one of the initial questions, you could say, what's the average investments that you do per year? And if, like for us, it's 5 or 6, which means, every other month, it's a regular but not ridiculous cadence. And that's because we'll do about 20 investments from a 100 million fund. It's not many. When we're with a lead investor, we're with you. So if you're looking for a partner to be with you along that journey, like quite hand in hand, that's the kind of style of investing that we do. Whereas you'll get others that were really big. There's some VCs, well, as you well know, Dama, like 90, 100 people. There's loads of them. They're doing like 2 or 3 a month. It really is bang, 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 bang. It is entirely different style. And I think it's really important you have all these different ones, because without the bang, bang, bang ones, like God, you'd just be stuck with us being very deliberate in investors. And I think you need all these different types. And I think different founders want different types of investors. So I think, it works.
Yeah.
So what's your kind of preference, Dama? What kind of style do you like? The bang, 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 or the more?
Oh, I think for us, because we do our first investment through the program, and it's about 25 investments every year. It feels like bang, bang, bang sometimes, but it's still a very deliberate process, right? Because ultimately, as impact investors, you also want to ascertain that you can invest into companies that want to operate responsibly. And sometimes that just has to sacrifice the sort of speed of building as well, because you want to build meaningfully without necessarily moving fast and breaking things, right? So
do you remember the 24-hour term sheet? Remember there was the times where some VCs were boasting about 4-hour term sheets. So from that, So for the listeners here, this is like
Mm.
you meet them other than within 24 hours. You've never met them before.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe that sounds like music to many people's ears. Like, oh, thank God I could just go off a bill. You don't know who the hell you've got on your board, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But equally, you'll also see that in what might ultimately come out of those fund returns, right?
Yeah, yeah.
TBD. But I guess that sort of leads on to a nice next question for us in terms of what sort of qualities then do you actually look for in the founders that seek investment from Ananda? And can you tell us a bit more around sort of the broad themes that Ananda also invests in?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start there. So Ananda have been around 15 years, have the 4 funds, the last one being 108 million euros. The fund has its HQ in Germany, in Munich, with an office in Berlin and one in London. And I look after the London office, so I'm based here in the UK. And we invest across climate, healthcare, tech bio, and education as well. So those areas. And I would say that most of our investments are in climate and healthcare. It's about 60-40, I'd say, right at the moment. And a high percentage of scientists and engineers. That's kind of the style that we've been doing and getting more into. And all 4 partners have been entrepreneurs themselves. So we've been through it. And the rest of the investment team are all scientists or engineers. So chemical engineers, biochemists, software engineers, electrical engineers. You've got the whole range there. So we do see a lot of decarbonisation of industry. We've got space techs and satellites in there. We've got a few with wet labs as well, so laboratories which have data on the top of them. So quite a bit of a mix of business models for the last 3 years, whereas prior to that, we were doing a lot more SaaS, so software as a service. And I think, our involvement towards these more mixed business models represents the change in the markets as to where things are going. And also, the size of our fund has grown significantly, which means we can put more money to work earlier on. And some of those companies that have more capital requirements at the beginning need that kind of money. So in terms of what we're looking for, like I say, most of them have some scientific and engineering background. If they come from a business background, they'll have paired up with somebody of that ilk. And that's a really nice combination, having the 2 together. And I'd be interested, these are the kind of traits, and maybe, I'd be interested to see whether you agree we're going for the same thing, because I think we're pretty much the same. I would say, because if you're going to build something that's VC backed or even impact VC backed, so we'll look for companies that can have outcomes of $1 billion plus. The valuations need to be of that size. So their industry changes. So if you're looking for somebody who's going to build something, in 10 years' time, that's going to change an entire industry, they have to be a little bit crazy. So I do love the crazy ones, because you've got to ignore a lot of what people say around you to be able to think you can either create or entirely change an entire industry. So there's a little bit crazy, and with the crazy with charisma, not like loopy. Although loopy combined with a charisma one, with 2 people together can, balance off on one another. I also like people. This is a personal preference for me, and you'll see it from the investors that I've invested in, who've lived a life with a little bit of pushback, let's say. That can mean a number of things, and whether that's social mobility, coming from a working class background, or an immigrant, or it could be somebody who actually had quite a decent childhood, but something affected them and they had to deal with something, while they were growing up, that fundamentally changed the way that they operate their life. And that, in terms of having those setbacks, but if they're speaking to me and they've come through all those setbacks, that's already a winner anyway. Because it's most people, if they've had a lot of setbacks, will settle for safety because they didn't have safety or whatever it is growing up. Yeah. And being a VC-backed startup founder is anything but safe. It is one of the highest risk things, and it pays miserably. Now, you can live But if you're that talented, and all these people are extremely talented, they could be working, if they're in London, they could be working in the city in finance, because these types of people are like chameleons, and they can evolve and adapt and be anything that they want to be and what anyone wants them to be. And, they'll always win and they'll survive, basically. They're survivors. So they could be earning a lot of money. And they choose to do this, or they're crazy. Because it'll take you a while to see any money out of this if you do. But so, it's whatever these people do, they will achieve. Because, everyone talks about resilience, but they're like cockroaches. They'll just come back, and, they'll bounce back. But they have that charisma and the craziness. And also, what I like to look for, which is why I can't do the 24-hour term sheet, I can do a month, though, because what I will do from meeting to investing is I want to see how fast they learn and adapt. If you're investing at pre-seed and seed, if it's a first-time founder, you can't go off very much anything. You can ring up where they used to work, but they may not have revealed their true entrepreneurial self to whoever they worked with. So this is very difficult. You can be one personality working in a corporate and quite another one, as I found out from myself, building your own company. And that's the beauty of building your own thing. You can become anything that you want. So if you want to re-scratch or redo something again, it's a perfect opportunity to reveal the next version of you. But that's very hard to reference because we have no background. So I will talk about the topic, the theme, the type of business that you want. I will give ideas and themes, and I'll look and we'll do check-ins, and we'll see if we can learn off each other, like bounce off and where it can stretch. And I'll be looking to see how their thinking is evolving. Can they evolve? Do they listen? Or are they just going to go their own way? I'm not saying I want to like manhandle everyone, but I want to feel a rapport. And I want to feel, if they're very strong and they can articulate where they want to go, that they pull me towards that. They're selling to me, because a CEO or anyone that's fundraising needs to also sell whatever they're building to someone. So if you can't sell to me, then, I think you're going to find it quite hard. So I want them to change my mind or move them with them, or we work together to come to where we want to go to. And it's like bouncing off each other. So that ability to adapt and learn really quickly demonstrates to me that I think the strongest skill that you need to have at pre-seed and seed, because you'll think you're selling to one market and the market changes. Oh, tariffs, oh, Trump. Okay, need to go another way. That one's not going to be fast enough, because you need to choose the fastest go-to-market, even if it's not the biggest at the beginning. And you need to be able to move everyone in the team, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, you need to persuade them and run in the other direction when you've just ran in one way for 2 or 3 months. And then you go, no, stop, not working. Got all this information. I need to move there. And then like 2-week iterations of learning and picking up. That is what I'm trying to pick up as an investor. And that's kind of the trait that I look for. And storytelling.
Yeah.
You've got a podcast, it's all about stories. And everyone goes, oh, bloody storytelling, my stuff works, And you're like, your stuff works. But unless people know about it, they don't want to hear. There's too many stories. Everybody's got a podcast. Everyone's got a YouTube channel. Everyone's got a TikTok. There's an Instagram. How are you going to get heard above all of that noise? Yeah. So it's not just the ability to tell a story, and act and have the drama in your voice. It's the ability to put that story together and engage and resonate with people so they listen to you above all the rest of that noise. And I think it's so hard now to be able to do that. So if they can do that, it can sometimes, for me, I can see some weaknesses in who they've hired, or gaps in their vision, or the product probably needs a bit more in this area. That can wipe out. If they can sell, which is the storytelling, then you can often fill the gaps around them.
Oh, so. Yeah. I think it's fairly similar in terms of, perhaps we wouldn't necessarily call it obsession or craziness, but the sort of audacity to just imagine, and
Hmm.
particularly because it is in the impact space, the audacity to imagine a better world for people and planet. And that sometimes that sort of goes hand in hand with the ambition piece, right? And you really want this to be a category defining business that makes huge, huge impact on people's lives, but also generates these type of returns. So we can also return that money to our
Yeah,
investors.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, no.
That's super, super interesting. I guess we kind of touched upon the sort of changes that we've seen in the sort of impact investing world, but where do you sort of see the impact investing space evolving in the sort of over the next 5 to 10 years?
As it- It's been an interesting 15 years of
Mm.
it's evolved enormously. I think it's going through a bit of a slow patch right now, and I don't need to say why, because I think everybody who listens to this in the middle of 2025
Yeah.
knows. I don't even want to say the name, but it's in a little bit of a stalling point at the moment. I think it's just stalled. It will restart. There's too much that's gone on now and too many people behind this. Plus, I do believe that younger generations are totally wanted to build companies in this space and want to work for companies in climate and healthcare and education to see a positive, a better world than the one they've grown up with, all this social media and the negativity and everyone's anxiety around world events because we're so much more aware of what's going on. And that's leading to a feeling of, melancholy and disenfranchisement. And you only need to look back at history when
Yeah.
people feel disenfranchised, what
God.
happens. So I think if hopefully those young people read history books and don't go the way of others, and that we work together, and there'll be new people in policy in charge of our countries, a different generation of prime ministers. It's already getting down to the early 40s in some places. In another 5 to 10 years, this will be the millennial
Mm.
generation, and soon younger than that in charge, being check writers, building those companies already are, but building really big companies and repeat entrepreneurs. I do think that it will continue to grow, become more mainstream. Like me and you have always said, that will still come that way. But I
Mm.
do believe the next stage, particularly with what's going on this year more than ever, we need to look at impact investing, to look at infrastructure, because I think, and we need to work with governments on that too, because it can't all be about private funding in this space, because
Mm.
governments have often built the infrastructure layer, but I think that it could go hand in hand, and there could be a new role for impact investing in infrastructure, in industry, but also in healthcare
Mm.
infrastructure and in the whole bio and chemistry space too. Um, I think there's so much to be built that could change our world in these areas, but it does need a different kinds of finance than the current VC returns that we all operate on, and an
Mm.
understanding of that. So I think, our funds need to change, and
Mm.
where we get the money from,
Mm.
and the kinds of money and things that we invest in. I think that's the next level that we
Yeah.
need to tackle for change.
Yeah.
So,
The sort of next step change or version of
yeah,
impact
yeah.
investing. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm here for it. I guess to round off this episode, what would you reckon is a piece of advice you'd give to any founder who wants to now go out and actually build a new impact-driven startup that we desperately need in the space?
I'd say it's very, when you're a founder and whatever you build, as I was saying before, the culture is you. I'd say, what kind of lifestyle do you want over the next 5 to 10 years? Because as you age, you go through different risk appetites,
Mm.
different situations, and I think today's younger generations do think more about their lifestyles and the kind of life they want to lead, which I think is incredibly healthy, um, because you can build different businesses, every 5 to 10 years. You don't think about this as just one business. They all stack actually on
Mm.
top of one another. They're like foundations. So you could have 6 or 7 businesses across your life in all these different areas, and it could be fascinating. But different kinds of businesses require different kinds of funding. Yeah. And that's the speed that you, and the type of stress, I guess, that you put on yourself, and the lifestyle is different. So if you're wanting to have your evenings and weekends, then perhaps running an early stage VC backed company is not the thing right now for you, but it could be when you're ready for building that kind of business at another point. So do think about what kind of life that you want over the next 5 to 10 years, because different funding puts you on different tracks, and to really think about that.
Yeah, I think it's such a pertinent question, because just seeing how founders now have emerged out of a global pandemic and sort of economic recession, and yet now another sort of geopolitical play that's at hand, it is a very valid question, and a piece of advice to just give to founders, to say, choose the lifestyle you want, and really
let that be in your control, rather than raising VC investment and then you feeling like you're being controlled, because most people go and start something off because they want the autonomy to be out of the machine. So just think very carefully about what kind of business you want to build.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining us today on Tech for Good with B2B. We will share show notes and any links to Ananda Impact Ventures as well, so people can get in touch and learn more about all of the amazing companies you've backed as well. But for the listeners, please do subscribe and give us a 5-star rating if you like.
5 stars.
And if you do have suggestions for guests or topics we should be covering on Tech for Good, do get in touch. If you're thinking about actually starting a Tech for Good venture and are looking for investment from value-aligned investors such as B2B or Ananda Impact Ventures, don't forget to check out our respective websites, bethelgreenventures.com for B2B, and what's it for Ananda?
Ananda.vc.
Ananda.vc, and see whether we might be able to help. So thank you, everyone, and see you next time. Bye.